Welcome to the Digital Native Podcast, where we talk to technology leaders about their journeys and what they've learned along the way. I'm more than excited to introduce today's guest, Henry Schuck. Henry's the founder and CEO of ZoomInfo. They've been the largest tech IPO of 2020 with a market cap of nearly $20 billion. The company's founded out of my hometown, Vancouver, Washington. Henry, thanks for joining.
Hey, Ryan, good to see you. Thanks for having me.
So you've had an incredibly busy couple months. You IPO'd, in early June. Folks have seen you probably on Bloomberg, Jim Cramer. What has the experience been like to IPO after 13 years and to go through all this in a pandemic?
Yeah, I mean, it's been really interesting and new and challenging. I would say the most impactful part of it is that I think the IPO was a super validating moment for our company, for our space, for all of our employees who took a chance on a business in a new category years ago when there were no other sort of big players in the space. And you just didn't really know if this was a company that was going to be much of anything. And so having that moment where we're validated by the public markets and investors and big shareholders, I think was really empowering for our staff and for our customers who many of whom have been with us for the last decade or more, to feel really good about the risk they took when they signed up for some new idea or software that we claimed would drive their sales and marketing motions, and to see that validated, across the world on the largest public markets, I think was really impactful for everybody.
And I've been excited. I've told you this. I mean, I interviewed with the company nearly 10 years ago. It was out on 4th Plain at the first office right next to the Muchas Gracias.
Yeah, I didn't know that, Ryan. Did you really?
Yeah, I did. And,
I had no idea. You've never told me that.
Oh, really? Yeah.
Yeah.
So, I mean, it was fun because, Patrick and Steven and all those guys remembered me from that interview. I was a Vancouver kid. I ended up being courted by a company who'd raised $130 million that was down in the Bay. Had promised, to take my wife and I out to wine country. Yep. And so that's what I ended up doing, which worked out pretty well. But at the time, to see, you guys going from the building, I mean, was that a church at one point?
Yeah, it turned into a church. It turned into a church. So we were in this like awful building. I have like these, I mean, look, it was an awful building, but when we were in it, I felt like $1 million. Like we'd never had like a building, an office before. We didn't have an office. We worked in my law school apartment. And then that was our first real commercial office. It was in a horrible part of town. It was across the street from a U-Haul, next door to a fast food Mexican restaurant, down the street from multiple like check cashing locations, just a tough part of town. But the rent was cheap, and it gave us a lot of space, and it gave us a real office that we could work out of. My competitors at the time used to like take a Google Street View image of our office, and if we were into like a head-to-head battle, they would send a picture of our office to our competitors.
Oh my goodness.
And it was like it was a very like difficult stigma to get around. But I think in the early days, what I found so I think why I have so much loyalty to our employees from those early days is that the company was tough to believe in, and so they had to believe in me, and they did, and that ended up being like a good bet. And they've done really well by making that sort of career risk at the time. But yeah, like we founded in 2007 in my law school apartment, moved to Vancouver in 2009, moved out of that space 2 years later, into an office park on the other side of town, grew out of that space, and we're kind of spread around a weird office park, and then finally moved to downtown Vancouver in 2014. And that really changed our ability to attract talent, changed our ability to retain talent, because you were in a pretty good spot. If you lived in Portland, we were one exit across the bridge. Like the city of Portland is literally a stone throws away from our offices in Vancouver. And so it really changed the trajectory of the company, being able to be in a much better spot. But it's awesome that you came to that place.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'll send you. I pulled up the assessment training. I went through kind of the whole round of interviews. Went through the panel with like 5 or 6, of the leaders on the team. I want to tell you, being in Vancouver, it's kind of a confusing place for people. You tell people Vancouver, they think BC.
Yes.
Tell them no, we're in Portland, they think Maine, and you say no, the state of Washington. They think Washington D.C. I guess I want to tell you one about how excited I am about the success of the company from that point to now. I was always told early in my career, you can't work for a good tech company in Vancouver or the Portland metro area. You're not going to get a job at Facebook or Google. And here we are. We have 200 plus people at Google are now in Portland.
Wow.
We had near $1 billion invested in the VC community last year in Portland, and now the largest tech IPO, right here in Vancouver, which is really exciting. But take me back, to those early days. You talked about your biggest competitor, sharing the screenshots of your first office. I guess a good place to start is take me back to that point. What was the story of founding the company?
Yeah.
The biggest competitor at that time, I'm guessing, was Rain King. I know that there was a lot of players in the space.
Yeah. So we founded it. I worked at a similar company when I was in college. I just finished my first year. I finished my first year as an undergrad at the University of Nevada, Las Vegas. I had no money and I was getting kicked out of the dorms. And so I had to find a place to live in the summer. And I sold my PlayStation online. I got $300. I had just enough to pay first month of rent. And then I applied to every job I could find. And got an interview at a data company that was a one-man show, and he was looking for basically an assistant to help him. At the time, the way he sold his product was there was a SaaS interface, but we were sending CDs out to customers. And so we would burn a CD, and so I would burn the CD for a new customer and put a label on it, and we'd ship it out to any new customers who were buying our data. And it was the precursor to what ends up being ZoomInfo. But after 5 years there, we grew the company from like a $300,000 a year revenue business to just under 5 million when I left. It got sold to private equity. I was off in law school. And then after a year of being in law school, decided to start a company that was similar to that company. And that was a company that just wasn't particularly investing in building a business. It was still a lifestyle business at 5 million in revenue. And there were like a couple college students around. And so we said, look, we think we can do this better. So let's go start this thing. My co-founder and I put $25,000 on our credit cards. And then we went out to market with something that we thought would help sellers and marketers hit their numbers. And the market responded really enthusiastically to the offer. So it was like the first year we did 300,000 in revenue. The second year we did $800,000 in revenue. The third year we did $2.7 million in revenue. And we just kept investing back into the business along the way. So we're, hired better salespeople, hired more technology people, hired more data folks, and the business just kind of grew and grew profitably through the years. And in that time, the other stigma, besides we weren't in Silicon Valley or Austin or anywhere like that, but the other stigma around this was we didn't have any VC money because we bootstrapped the thing and we were growing the business in a profitable way. And I like the common refrain that you would hear back then is like, and I had to fight this off with my employees too, because they'd go read Jason Lemkin's blog and they'd come back to me and go, hey, we should be growing 150% and not having any profitability. And I was like, I don't think that's a real business. Like, I think businesses should grow and grow profitably. The whole point is to generate profit for your shareholders and your investors. And so I spent, a good chunk of the 13 years that we founded this business convincing my employees mainly that even though the conventional wisdom was to burn through money for growth, that I wasn't going to build a business like that. And then ultimately, at some point in the future, This would be a business that would be valued and worth much more than those that just burn through cash to grow. And so we're super disciplined about the way we spend money. We're super disciplined about, where we deploy resources and how we get value out of those resources. Just the other day, we were thinking about buying a domain name for $150,000. And we brought it up on a call, and our CFO said, yeah, that's fine. I get it. It's $150,000. But someone needs to explain to me how it increases sales or decreases churn. It's like, yep, somebody does need to explain that. And we're just not going to spend money in a way that's, a growth at all costs. We want to be disciplined with the way we deploy those resources. And that's something that when you bootstrap a company and put the money on your credit card, you kind of have no choice. But like keeping that DNA throughout the company, I think has been a secret sauce of ours.
Yeah, and I've heard that JP Morgan Chase, you consider them one of the first investors.
Yeah, that was my joke.
That's
JP
awesome.
Morgan Chase was my credit card that I put $25,000 on. I don't know why they gave me a $25,000 limit when I was in college, but they did, which also gave me like all sorts of newly found like loyalty towards Chase, because you get this credit card, it's like 5 times the limit of anything else you've ever seen. And you're like, oh, dang, these people really trust me. And JP Morgan was one of our investment bankers on the IPO. And I was like, it's the best angel investment they've ever made.
I love it.
Yeah.
So going back to those early days, I mean, you were up against competition that had, a ton of funding, that probably had some really senior experienced leadership in place.
Yeah.
What were some of the keys to success and how you guys differentiated early on? Start there.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, in the early days, competition was great because you got a bunch of smart people innovating at their company, and I'm innovating at my company, and I can borrow ideas from them. Like if they go out and do something that's super innovative, I'm not just going to sit back and like try to convince myself that like we don't need to do that innovative thing too. It drives innovation when you see your competitors doing something and it puts you behind in the market. And so, Ranking, for example, which is a company we acquired in 2017, the founding CEO was a brilliant marketer. He's just so good at marketing. And so his ability to get messaging across to our buyers didn't just help him, it helped us too, because he was out there explaining to the world why they needed a platform like this. And then when someone went out to look for competitors before they pulled the trigger, there we were, and we had a really compelling story, and in a lot of ways, what we believe to be a better product. And so we benefited from having competition in our space, and we learned from them. So we had all these people who had done it before who we could learn from, even from afar. And then we just said, look, we're just going to grind this thing out. We're going to work harder. We're going to care more. We're going to be better salespeople. We're going to follow up better and build better relationships with our customers and respond faster. We're just going to be a more nimble, better company. And when your blood, sweat, and tears are in the thing, like there's a bad tweet about ZoomInfo online, like it's like someone punched me in the face. Like that's the way it feels. And if I'm just like a career executive, maybe not so much. I go, yeah, that's one of the downsides of our product, or I'm still fixing support. Like we'll get that resolved at some point. Like I literally feel like someone is insulting me personally when they don't like our product. So I think in the early days, everybody felt that way. And so we're just so much more motivated to be better and innovate faster and be more responsive and really win against sort of the bigger competitor.
I've been part of a culture like that a couple times in my career. And when you truly care and you're thinking about it, day and night, I mean, how do I get better? I mean, the results speak for themselves.
100%. I think the culture of continuous improvement at our company is a big part of our success. And we're constantly telling people like who the professional you are today is not going to be good enough for the professional you need to be 1 year from now. It's just not. So if you go a full year and at the end of next year, Like you're exactly the same as you are today. All those things that you don't do really well, that you don't do really well, you haven't improved on, somebody else in the company is going to, and they're just going to like lap you until you're in the bottom quartile of performers across all of the company. And so we're trying to instill that desire for self-improvement in everybody.
Absolutely. So, I mean, you've always come off to me as a very competitive person. Where does that come from? I mean, is that kind of innate, or is that something that's been built over time?
I don't know. Yeah, I'm pretty competitive. I think I play a little bit with a chip on my shoulder, and so I'm trying to prove that like in the business is better than people give it credit for, and I'm a better operator than people give me credit for, and so I'm constantly trying to sort of prove that. There's a funny story in the Portland Business Journal when I was talking. They did an article on us, and one of the things Malia Spencer, who's a writer in there, and by the way, like Malia Spencer is a gift to the Pacific Northwest. She's just a fantastic business writer who always sort of like sees the right points in business articles. So we should be really thankful that we have her writing for us, or for writing for our region.
Completely agree.
Yeah, she's really great. And in the article, she said something like, Henry's always been wound tight. When he chose his college major, he chose it because somebody told him that the major was the hardest major in the college. And that is what happened. Someone told me accounting was the hardest major, and I was like, okay, well, if I'm going to be here, I'm going to take the hardest thing. And so I
get
guess
your money's worth.
yeah, I'm going to get my money's worth. And so I think competitiveness is, it's kind of like innate.
That's great. So I want to talk about the market and some of the trends that you're seeing. I mean, specifically with B2B sales, I think you guys have a pulse, and you specifically have a pulse. Many consider ZoomInfo to be the most sophisticated go-to-market engine ever built. Can you tell us more, for context, tell us more about the ZoomInfo platform and how you help your customers?
Yeah, so let me talk to you about the platform, but let me give you an example of the sophistication of how we go to market. Today, if you come to our website and you fill out a form, one of our sales development reps is going to call you within 90 seconds. And the sales development rep who's calling you has been handpicked by an algorithm as the best sales development rep who's most likely to convert you into a demo. And when you fill out that form, it's a couple of fields, but immediately as you fill the form out, we're layering in a whole bunch of key data insights that we're getting from ZoomInfo. The year your company was founded, how much funding you've received, whether you have a chief revenue officer or not, how many salespeople you have, what marketing automation and CRM tool you're using, so that when the sales development rep gets you on the phone, they have all sorts of information about you and your company. And then if you agree to a demo, we're instantly ranking the account executives who are most likely to turn that lead into a closed won sale at the highest ASP. And so running data through the entire go-to-market motion is something that everybody kind of is trying to do or is doing in some small way or another. And we've just been really diligent about running it all the way through the entire motion. And what the ZoomInfo platform does is it gives you the data, the technology, and the insights on 14 million companies, 120 million business professionals, on a whole slew of attributes about the company and about the professionals that allows you to be super targeted in your outreach, to identify all the companies that are relevant in your total addressable market, and then to identify the companies that are most likely to be the next buyer of your product or service, and at the right time. So not every company is in market today for, a WAN acceleration tool, but a company that today is researching 10 times more about WAN acceleration than it was historically, that's a company you want to be talking to. A company that's indicated that they have a project or initiative where they're going to spend $3 million on a WAN acceleration tool in the next 9 to 12 months, that's who you want to be talking to. And so we're gathering all those insights on those companies. We're linking them together with the professionals who make the buying decisions at those companies. And then we're serving that up to our customers in our platform. We're also embedding that into CRM and marketing automation tools where they can take advantage of that data as well.
I love it. One of the taglines you use, and you know, the way I would maybe explain it to my grandmother, who has, you know, is not a technical person, is we help you find your next best customer.
Yep.
And I think that best part is important because you want, you know, really strong and you know, the right customers, as well as the timing and all the intelligence.
Yep, totally.
Which is great.
And actually, you know, you can find your next customer. It might take you like a really long time. It might be in the wrong space. You might go through 15 bad customers before you find your next customer. And so I think the whole concept of making this super efficient, so you're finding your next best customer in the most efficient way, you know, like that really is the game.
So on the other side of the coin, what are some of the challenges that you're seeing when it comes to leveraging customer data and intelligence, specifically in B2B? And what are some of the trends?
Yeah, I think what you see is people now recognize that this data exists, and it exists in a robust way, and they're trying to figure out how to take advantage of it most effectively. And so what you see happening in go-to-market organizations is they're becoming way more technical. And so there's data, like in our organization, and many organizations that I see every day, they have data scientists embedded right inside of sales or right inside of marketing to help you do the analytics and bring in the data that you need to identify your best customers, to identify who your customers are and what segments they're in and which ones use your product the most or the least, and which ones are churning and which ones are adding more. And historically, people have tried to do that just with the data that lives in the four corners of their website or within their product. And they don't bring in any third-party outside data because it just hasn't been available in a robust way. And so I think what people are doing now, what you see happening in sales and in marketing and in product marketing and product management, is they're saying like, it's great to know like what our customers are doing in the system or what people are doing on our website. But what about the world of information that's happening outside of what we have visibility to on our website or in our product? Because these companies are growing and shrinking. They're getting new funding. They're hiring new executives. They're moving locations and announcing new products and partnerships. And none of that information has been available to commingle with your own first-party data to really make the best decisions. And so what you're seeing is companies are evolving their go-to-market motion so that they're more data-driven, that they're more data science-driven. They're building broad databases that they're putting all of the data inside of to do analytics across. And that is really the future of sales. I watched an interview the other day with the Peloton CEO right after they IPO'd, and he said, you know, we hire MIT data scientists and we sit them inside of our marketing organization so that they can help us figure out like, where do we spend the next incremental dollar of marketing? Is it on TV? Is it on ads? Is it in direct marketing? Is it in our stores? And so we're constantly analyzing every dollar of spent from a marketing and sales perspective, and then making really smart decisions with data scientists and statisticians to know how to spend our resources most wisely. And that is the future of B2B marketing and B2B sales.
All this data and automation, I mean, is cold calling going away anytime soon?
No way. There's just no way cold calling is going away. Because someone's got to pick up the phone and call you. Like, okay, so what happens in a scenario where I know you're in market for my product or service? I know who the buyer of the product or service is. I know you've been doing research online about my product or service, and you've never filled out a form on my website. Like, what do you do in that scenario? You just like hope that they like come to your website? It's just not a strategy. And when you have all of this data that goes like, hey, my perfect customer looks like this and is in market for my service, you're just like a fool not to pick up the phone and call the person who's responsible for that decision.
I've heard you talk about, you know, kind of a jab. I heard you talk about, if you have a solution and it can provide value for my business, you know, why would you not call me? I mean,
why would you not call me?
That call. And there's such a stigma because I think we've seen it done so poorly in so many areas. But at the end of the day, I mean, business is innovation and it's sales and marketing, and you have to have both.
That's exactly right. Business is innovation and sales and marketing. And, you know, some businesses, like I thought about this the other day. My wife has friends who sell Rodan fields, which is like a face cleansers and that type of merchandise. And really all that business is a go-to-market channel. Like they've built a go-to-market around a product that everybody has. There's thousands of vendors who are selling face cleansers, or face stuff for men and women. But they built a go-to-market engine that captures the attention of people to sell this direct. And that is the business. There's innovation around the facial cleansers, but it's undifferentiated in a lot of ways. But the differentiated motion is this go-to-market motion. And so when you're building a company, you can't just innovate on the product side. You need to be innovating your go-to-market motion too. And I think people just forget that. They think like, if I built something really great, people will just, jam through my door to buy it from me. It's just not realistic.
Yeah, especially not in the B2B space. Yeah. I was wondering why your skin was looking so good.
Yeah, that's right.
So we use the product, your guys' product heavily at Google. I found that so much about sales in my career is being smarter and more tactical than the competition. There's a quote that always makes me think of your guys' product by Abraham Lincoln. It's, give me 6 hours to chop down the tree and I'll spend the first 4 sharpening the axe.
Yeah.
Give me some examples. I mean, how can sales reps use your product to gain a leg up on the competition?
Yeah, there's so much intelligence inside of the ZoomInfo system that you can gather and then go have a real conversation with the prospect. I can call up a potential prospect and just say like, hey, it's Henry calling from ZoomInfo. I wanted to talk to you about how 15,000 companies are using our product to go to market. Can we set up 15 minutes to have that conversation? Or I can go in and say, hey, John, I just found out that you guys got funded from Sequoia. I wanted to talk to you about the 15 other companies at Sequoia who leverage our solution to go to market. And they're all using Salesforce and Marketo just like you are. And they all have a sales team that has 15 reps just like you guys do. Let's set up a call and I can show you how the other Sequoia funded companies are using our tool to go to market. And it's just such a more compelling message. And all of that data and tons more is available in a couple of clicks in the ZoomInfo platform. And so you should be doing research before you call an executive at a company you want to sell to, especially when we've made it like so easy to be able to get that level of detail. And people want to know you've done that work. Like I tell all of our employees, like, do not go to a call until you've looked at the company's job board. Because if you want to know how they care about sales or why they care about sales, look at what they're saying their account executives are required to do. Like, and if cold calling and generating new business is part of that requirement, there's nothing better than getting on the phone with somebody and saying, hey, John, I just read your job posting for an account executive. It sounds like new business growth is really important to you. As you've said, like 3 of the 6 things an account executive has to do at your company is to generate new business sales. Let me talk to you about how we're helping account executives do that. That's so much more compelling than a generic cold call. So yeah, you spend your time sharpening the saw and then it just lands better.
It's incredible for me because, I mean, you guys are completely changing the way that sales is being done. And, for someone who's been in sales for about a decade, I started my career was kind of throwing a phone book and said, start dialing. And I said, I'm calling these people. They don't know who I am. I'm trying to, on the fly, explain first who I am and what we do. And just thinking there's got to be a better way.
Yeah.
And I was kind of told by my management team, no, that's a waste of time. I mean, don't do any research. And so I do it on my own time. And, the output of all this is a win for everybody because people, who likes being, cold called and having your time wasted.
Yep. No one wants to be cold called with a non-compelling message. Like that's for sure. I get calls on my phone or through text message all the time. That's like, hey, are you the owner of this property? We'd like to buy it from you. It's like, okay, there's nothing to indicate that I'm interested in selling my property. But if you have some insight about me and that like I haven't been to that property in 3 months and I've been Airbnb-ing it or whatever, like that's such a more compelling message. And we've brought all of that data together from a B2B perspective and made it readily accessible to your sales and your marketing teams. It's like, it's malfeasance not to use it.
Amazing. So, you talked about your company is continually iterating. So at any given time, you have the mantra, keep getting better, never get too high, never get too low. At this point in time, what are some of the strengths of ZoomInfo, of the company and the platform, and how is the product unique when it comes to the competitive advantage?
Yeah. On the product uniqueness side, there's no platform out there that's brought together the breadth, the depth, and the accuracy of business information the way that we have. And if you think about like how we got here, ZoomInfo today is a combination of what was DiscoverOrg and what was ZoomInfo. So DiscoverOrg was the name of the company that I founded in 2007, and we were focused almost exclusively on providing really high quality data on IT and marketing decision makers. And everything we did was with the focus on how do you get it of the highest quality possible, and then how do you go really deep on the insights that you provide, whether they be technographics or funding information or projects and initiatives that are happening at the company. And then on the ZoomInfo side, the focus was how do you provide as much data as possible on businesses and business-to-business professionals at those businesses without much of a focus on the quality of that information. And really, when DiscoverOrg made the acquisition of ZoomInfo, what we said was, how do you bring those two things together? How do you bring best-in-class accuracy together with best-in-class quantity? How do you bring the quantity and quality equation together? So we spent, first 9 months of the acquisition marrying quality and quantity of the data asset together, and then building a platform that was next generation, that provided more analytics, integrated into more systems, provided more unique data points that allowed for targeting and audience building in the most granular way. And there's just today, I believe there's no competitor that's anywhere close to the depth, breadth, accuracy, and the integrations that we've built.
And I'm wearing my DiscoverOrg shirt, which I pointed out, which you noticed. I think
that's been an interesting, we changed the name, which is like an interesting case study in and of itself. But the company DiscoverOrg acquired ZoomInfo and then changed the company's name to ZoomInfo. So I worked for a year on making sure that I don't call it DiscoverOrg, that I do call it ZoomInfo, and I've corrected our board, I've corrected my wife a bunch of times, and now my daughter and I have this thing where I told her, for 1 year we were going to call it ZoomInfo powered by DiscoverOrg, and then we're going to get rid of the powered by DiscoverOrg part. My daughter's 4 years old, and she throws a fit when I tell her, like, it's not going to be DiscoverOrg anymore. She's no, it will always be DiscoverOrg to me. It will not just be ZoomInfo. Like, no, it's just going to be ZoomInfo.
Well, on one hand, you've got to be excited that you're not going to hear discover.org anymore.
100%.
But on the other, now Zoom, everybody's going to think you're a communication video platform.
Totally. It just was not, when we renamed the company, which was we announced it internally in June of 2019. Zoom Video was a great B2B video conferencing company. And then now it's much more popular than that and much more in the vernacular of everybody. And so much more confusion today than before.
Well, I've got to give you credit as well. I've spent some time out in Waltham with the team out of ZoomInfo and then here in DiscoverOrg. And I think another thing that differentiates you guys is the people. The people, especially those that are in leadership positions, kind of across the board, are really high quality people, really good people. I guess, one, I think it's anything that you're excited about, I guess, on the roadmap is the last question I have in terms of ZoomInfo. I should probably ask too, I'm with Google. I mean, how's the relationship with Google? We're excited about you guys.
Yeah, absolutely. We have a great relationship with Google. Like all of our infrastructure is hosted on Google Cloud. We use Gmail as our G Suite as our tools and our email. It's really interesting, actually, Ryan. Like, in today's world, I don't really need my computer ever. I just need a computer, and access to the internet and a browser, and I have access to all of my documents, all of my emails. It's just such a different world. Like, when I see people carrying around their computers and they have like file structures on their local machines. I'm like, who is doing that anymore? I have everything that I need at my fingertips at any browser, and I don't have to ever have like my machine with me, which is just such a different way to run a business. And it's been a great relationship, hopefully both ways. And so we've obviously have Google Cloud customers, we're Looker customers, we're BigQuery customers, we're Kubernetes customers, we're kind of on everything. So great relationship there. I think on the roadmap, what we're thinking a lot about is, and we have tools that do this today, and we're continuing to build on top of it. But I think the future of B2B sales and B2B marketing is centered around this idea that you can come into a system, designate who your ideal customers are, designate who your ideal buyers at those customers are, and then designate triggering events that would make the right time to be reaching out to them, and then automate your motion from there. So for us, we might say our best customers are companies with over 10 employees, and they have at least 3 salespeople, and they're based in the United States, and they use Salesforce or Marketo or HubSpot or whatever, or Dynamics. And they were founded after the year 2005. And a triggering event would be if they're spiking on research topics on the B2B web related to sales intelligence, sales leads, marketing intelligence, marketing automation, marketing leads, qualified leads. If they're spiking on those topics, then I want to do a number of different things. I want to send it to a sales development rep to call immediately. I want to put it into a sales automation campaign. I want to put it in a marketing automation campaign. I want to put it in a CRM campaign. I want to put ads against it. I want to start a campaign from an ad tech perspective against those buyers. And then I want to orchestrate that motion. And so maybe for one segment of the best customers, it's when they're spiking on sales intelligence or sales leads. And maybe for another segment, it's when they're spiking on new products. So new product launches. I know if you're doing a new product launch, you want a big audience to tell it to. I run a different motion for that. And I create all these triggers on what's happening in the world and then link that to my go-to-market motion. I think that's the holy grail of what every sales and marketing organization wants to do. And we're working really hard to make sure that that is as robust of a functionality as it can be inside of our platform. So that's where we're driving from a roadmap perspective.
It's powerful. And I want to turn the conversation now a bit more personal to round things out. First off, young folks, 13 years ago, you founded the company, you were 23. In the big scheme of things, 13 years is not a ton of time for all this to happen. What advice do you have for folks that are early in their tech or sales career?
I think the best advice I can give is pick the right company. Make sure you trust the leadership and you trust your manager and you trust your sales leadership to do the right thing, because there are multiple different ways to see any change or decision that your sales leadership makes. And the only way you can get comfortable with those decisions is that you really trust them. And so make sure you trust them and then drown out the noise, because in your job every day, there's going to be all sorts of things, both internal and external, that throw you off of your game and have the ability to make you sort of spiral down the drain in a bad way. And like your toughest job is going to be to drown out that noise and focus on the most important things in front of you, which are going to be your customers and your prospects, and not let the outside world sort of impact how you interact with customers and prospects. Like, don't spin the drain. Like, one of the things about our company is we're constantly changing things. And we think and we used to be ashamed of it. We'd be like, oh yeah, sorry, we changed that thing after we changed it already. And then at some point we just went, no. This is just who we are. So you should get used to lots of things changing and know that we're keeping an eye on every change we make and we want to make the right changes, but we're measuring it. If we make the wrong change, we're going to stop that thing and come in with another iteration. But every one of those changes is a moment for a sales rep or a customer success manager, account manager to go like, this company doesn't know what it's doing. And if you look at it with that perspective, it's either because you don't trust your leaders or you're not doing a good job of drowning out the noise. So if you solve for those two things, I think you're in a pretty good place.
It's great advice. And speaking of drowning out the noise, as a CEO, where do you spend your time? I've heard some stories about you making time for the sales team every month. Yep.
I spend a lot of time today on making sure. Somebody told me this years ago. I asked a CEO the same question, the CEO of a multi-billion-dollar company. And he said, I spend a lot of my time aligning my direct team, like making sure we're all aligned. And I thought that was just kind of like corporate gobbledygook. Like,
what does that mean?
Yeah. So I asked him, I go, what does that mean? And he's like, well, we set out with these like strategic initiatives and things that are important to the company. And what I'm doing is constantly making sure that everybody is focused on those things that we've said are the most important things for the company. So I spend a good amount of time making sure that everybody understands these are the most important things that the company is doing. And then making sure everybody can connect that to their role and how it impacts those most important things. So I spend a lot of time across my direct team making sure we're focused on the right things and we're moving all of those things in the right direction, making sure we're staffed with the right people. Like maybe there's an area that we want to be really focused in and we don't have the right leader for that area. Like, are we out there trying to find that leader to bring them in? So I spend a good amount of time on recruiting. I spend a good amount of time on aligning. I spend a good amount of time on product innovation and product roadmap, product management. And then I get involved with sales. So when there's an opportunity for me to talk to a customer or send an email or make a phone call to a customer, happy or not a customer yet or a prospect, I'm always available to do that for our sales team.
I absolutely love that. A couple more minutes, and I think you got to run, but a couple questions I want to get to. What have been your biggest challenges as a CEO, and were there any leadership skills that didn't come naturally to you that you had to work harder on?
Yeah, I did not appreciate how important persuasion was in this role. Like, not only do you have to have a vision, but you have to get everybody bought into that vision. And that means you have to be really articulate and really persuasive and really think through how everybody's going to like dissect that vision and tell you it's wrong and all the reasons why they're going to tell you it's wrong. And then really have answers to all of that in the presentation of that vision. And so
like thinking 2 or 3 steps ahead.
Totally. Like if I'm going to tell you something is my vision, I'm also thinking about all of the things you're going to tell me that make that vision wrong and making sure I'm addressing it when I'm telling you what that vision is, or when I'm laying out that vision. So I think persuasion is something that is not an undervalued talent. Like you're not just the CEO and you get to do whatever you want. I don't just get to like go into our chief technology officer's office and go, this is what we're doing now in engineering. And I can't just like go to my chief revenue officer and go, this is what we're doing now in sales. It just doesn't work like that. If you hire great people, they'll never let you do that to them. And so much of my job is like, can I convince you to see my perspective? And if I can't, then it's probably not the right perspective anyways. But if I can get you to, if I can get us all to see the same thing, whether it's your perspective or my perspective or a blend of our perspectives, then we can really go fast. But if we're all like operating on different visions and different things that we think we're doing, we're just not going to get anywhere. And so much of my job that I didn't appreciate before is making sure that that I can persuade everybody to march towards the same goal.
I love it. And you spoke to how important empathy is in persuasion. And I think that's something that doesn't come naturally, that is, a bit harder to learn.
Totally.
So, last question I have for you. What does success look like in the next 5 to 10 years for both the business and for you personally?
Yeah, I want to be a super successful publicly traded company. I want to have organic growth rates that are in north of 30%. I want to be an icon. I want to build this company into an iconic software company. And so I think that's what we're driving towards. A software company that every sales and marketing organization relies on to go to market. I think when we get there, we'll feel pretty good.
And to round us out, anything, folks might not know about you outside of work?
I played water polo in college and on a club team in college and in high school. That's a good one.
Yeah. Well, awesome. Well, Henry, I want to thank you again for being generous with your time. I thought it was a great conversation. I'm excited to share it. Again, excited to have you here in our community. I see what you're doing as part of the Evergreen School District, which my kids are a part of. But thanks again, and we'll be rooting for you, obviously.
My pleasure. Thank you, Ryan. Thank you for having me.